Welcome back to Just Giants with Grump and the Cranky Fan, your favorite Giants podcast. I'm your host, the Football Grump. With me, as always, is Mike, the Cranky Fan, even though you can't see us. So I am suffering from some technical difficulties that only popped up today, and I am unable to capture. So unfortunately, those of you watching on YouTube will see a still image. But all those who just
That
listen on your podcast apps, business as usual.
that may be a blessing in disguise for people. With our faces made for radio, this is fantastic.
Yeah.
It's our
So
Christmas present to you,
there you go.
basically. How you doing,
So
Grump?
I'm doing well. This is going to be a long week as we round the final lap into the last week of the NFL season. Um, there's
Amen.
there's a lot of speculation, right? And we're going to get to as much stuff as we absolutely can. But the Giants won the toilet bowl, the mega tank bowl, whatever you want to call it. But they won the game and therefore lost the bowl 34-10. They beat the Las Vegas Raiders in Las Vegas, and you know we'll get to the entire tank thing. But if you're going to win this game, right, this is about as good as it should. Like, you should dominate this game. There's like sort
Yeah.
of talking about like what's the worst case scenario. The worst case scenario is winning, but like struggling to win and winning by like a point in a game where the other team is
A,
right.
a frustrating one because this game never felt like, oh, we might actually lose this game. It was like, well, we're winning this game. So now let's utilize these 3 hours to the best of our future development of this team. It's, getting Jackson Dart reps. It's getting, this team reps. And yeah, I agree. I to me, and I will caveat this by saying I was at the Lightning game yesterday down in Tampa. So I wasn't watching it live, but I was following very closely, obviously. And I got that sense pretty early just from, you know, my third person view of it. Is like, we're not losing this game. So okay, I'm not worrying about it.
And it was kind of hard to see us losing this game, even if both teams are playing full strength.
Mhm.
The Raiders are a terrible team on paper, and they are a terrible team in reality. And then there's the added layer of players forcibly removed so that they would not play, namely Max Crosby being sat despite his wishes and to continue playing through injury. And to some credit, the Giants did put some guys on IR, but also all those like Andrew Thomas, John Michael Smith, like those guys did get injured last week. It's not like they've been
Mhm.
battling through injury all year.
Right.
So there was kind of a slight difference there, but
Well, we had the
regardless, yeah,
conversation.
yeah,
We had the
I would say
conversation
you were
last
right.
week.
This game was not in any way in any doubt. I think once Geno Smith threw the first pick, they were kind of driving a little bit, and then he threw a really really silly ball essentially into double coverage and right to Bobby Okereke, who returned it for a ways. And after that, I was like, I don't know. After the Giants scored on that drive, I got the sense that this was just not going to be a game.
Well, we had the conversation last week, Grump, that if we glob together all of the really bad teams in the league, that the Giants were better than most, if not all of them. If you want to put, you know, the five teams with the five worst records in the league, we might be the best of all of them. And we've had a combination of just bad luck, bad execution, turmoil in the front office, and turmoil in the coaching staff. But we said that this team is way better than Vegas. So this outcome should not be so much of a surprise, even if it's like this is a week 6 game, for example.
Yeah, and there were some nice things to be had from this game. Jackson Dart looked good in this game. Went 22 of 30. Had a couple of people drop some passes too, so those numbers would have been even higher. 207 yards. He also rushed for 2 touchdowns on roughly 50 yards. I thought
Mhm.
Tyrone Tracy looked pretty good running the ball. He averaged 4.4 yards per carry on 14 carries. Singletary ran the ball well and only 8 carries. He had 45 yards and a
Yeah.
touchdown in the goal line scenario. And Wan'Dale Robinson was kind of the entire engine of the offense. He had 11 catches for 14 on 14 passes, one of which he actually dropped trying to extend the ball for the first down. got 113 yards, and eclipsed 1,000 yards in a 16-game stretch. So the extended season did not benefit Wan'Dale Robinson. He hit the 1,000-yard mark in the normal, or whatever, the
Good
traditional.
for him.
Yeah, yeah. So I
Good
mean,
for.
like I said, like if when you play this tank bowl and you win, the worst case scenario is not looking like this and win, right?
Yeah, I agree. Um, Whoops. Hold on 1 second. Okay. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different ways you can go with this. It's like, organizationally, should they have been, first of all, we can talk about it from an organizational standpoint. We can talk about it from a fan base and slash media standpoint. Let's talk about the organizational standpoint first. Um, we are not in the same position we were at this time last year. It was the same weekend where we were in another tanking situation and we beat the Colts and cost us, the number one pick in the draft. The major difference is that we were in desperate need of a quarterback, and we had the opportunity to get the best quarterback that was projected out last year, and we blew it. This year it's different. When you have that piece already and quarterback is not your biggest need and the best chance of you to get one, that with this current administration, because we don't know what will happen, if Joe Shane gets blown out and as a new coach, they may look at Jackson Dart and think it's, he may not be, you know, their guy. But let's consider, Joe Shane coming back and everything. It's different. It's more about getting assets and everything. So the flip side of the coin is utilizing these final 4, 3, 2, 1 weeks left of the season going forward. And the most important thing we have is Jackson Dart, and Jackson Dart playing and getting reps. And, every time he's under center, that's helping towards next year and the year after and the year after. So I, last year, I was super pissed after that Colts game. I was in a bar actively rooting against the Giants, actively losing. We would lose that game, and it didn't happen. And I was furious after this one. Again, would have been nice to lose, but I did not have any of that aggravation feeling that I could have had if we would have, would have been last year. Um, your thoughts, Grump? Do you think they did the right thing?
Um, Not entirely. So, I mean,
Okay.
there's a lot that goes into this. So, I guess first things first. What they would have needed to do to tank this game happens at the top level of, basically what the Raiders did is taking your best player. So, in
Right.
order for the Giants to do this, this would require removing players that kind of aren't hurt, which is difficult,
Mhm.
right? So, like your big impact players that you would have to remove from this game in order to guarantee yourself a loss when you go out there and just play would be removing Brian Burns, who is not hurt, removing Abdul
Right.
Carter, who is not hurt. Um, I think that's about it on defense. They inactivated Cordell Flott, who is with injury, but I think if this game mattered in any sort of way, or even was not part of a tank and it was just whatever, they'd continue to play him. But otherwise, I think with Paulson Adebo, Javon Holland, Tyler Nubin was inactivated for this game. I think that would do it for the defense. Maybe Dexter Lawrence, who is dealing
Mhm.
with that elbow injury still, I would say. On the
Yep.
offensive side of the ball, and this is the big one, you'd have to take Jackson Dart out. I
Mhm.
really, I really don't think that you can actively tank the way that you want to and have Jackson Dart on the field,
Right.
and have Wandale on the field. I mean, maybe enough damage can be done by wrecking your defense and taking Jackson Dart off the field. But James Winston is not terrible operating this
That's it.
offense. So like you might have to take Wandale off the field. So I think that the Giants did a little bit by taking Theo Johnson off the field, taking Andrew Thomas, John
Mhm.
Michael Schmitz, these guys off the field. Uh, um, who did I say?
Tyler
and
Newman.
Tyler Nubin and somebody Cordell Flott were taken off for the defense. That's a little bit, but it's not It's clearly not what the Raiders did, and it's not enough to lose to a terrible Raiders team.
Yeah,
So that's what would have had to be done, I think.
right. And
I think.
you can make an argument even for Jackson Dart being healthy. You can make the argument, well, if there's no Andrew Thomas, if there's no JMS, is it better off like preventative? You can't run your normal 100% offense without your two of your five starting offensive linemen. The season's over already. That could be kind of your argument, for not playing Jackson Dart.
Sure.
But let me get back to the moral question for a second. How do you stand? Where do you stand where, next week a lot of quarterbacks are not going to play because it's a week 17. Teams have either clinched playoff spots or are out of it and everything. How do you separate the moral thing of not playing guys as opposed to tanking when you're not either case you're not actually trying to win that particular game?
Are, are you are you grouping together just shutting down guys before playoffs along with teams tanking?
Yeah, I'm asking do you see like a moral difference between the two?
Of course. I
Okay.
mean, I think in terms of is it good? Like, is it a good thing for the game and for whatever? Like, clearly not. Like, no one wants to watch outside of you know the strongest of the fan base of the two teams playing. No one wants to watch a team not field a real team because they truly don't care about winning because the season is over. Um, and there's more interest in a team that is winning and is resting their starter. Like that's without a doubt. But there is also like this Sandlot kind of atmosphere to it where none of it's taken seriously, but it's still enjoyed. If you had it, let's put the Giants in this scenario.
Mhm.
It's week 17. The Giants are 12-4, um, and they've already clinched the NFC East. You and I are season ticket holders. Um, you're not going to consider not going to the game just because, like, I mean, maybe you'll consider it if someone's offering you big money for your ticket, but just like, are you openly like putting your ticket on the market, or would you rather just go to the game and enjoy whatever happens and just be still caught up in the fervor of we're going to the playoffs next?
Yeah, I think it's a little different. If you're 12-4, you're just in a good mood with your team. You're still watching, unless they're going to pull, 11 starters out. If they pull, if Jackson Dart's that quarterback and they bring in Jameis, for example,
You'd still
you
go to
know,
that game, right?
I'd still go to it. Sure. I mean, you have a tailgate to go to. We have our friends we sit next to. Everybody's in a good mood. We're all thinking about in 2 weeks when we come back from the bye and we're hosting a division game. Um,
Well, I think also we're all there watching the game together and also looking at our phones and scores around the league and how that impacts the playoffs.
yeah,
And we're all together. Like, you know what I mean? So
right.
I think that there is a difference in terms of like how it affects the game. It's certainly less of a travesty when you have teams resting players. Um,
I
if the league gave enough of a shit about it though, they'd alter the schedule in some way where this thing kind of wouldn't happen so often. And I mean specifically, I don't mean because like football is different than other sports, right? Like
Mhm.
these guys get hurt very badly. Their careers are very short. Their window of being in their prime is also very short. You know, you make a very good argument that it is in the best interest of your franchise to shut down an Andrew Thomas rather than expose him to games that do not impact the immediate future, like that season, right?
Mhm.
Regardless, let's
Mhm.
say that the Giants are 6-7 and they're just out of it and that's it. Andrew Thomas is hurt. We still feel good about this team. This year didn't go our way. We're a few pieces away. Like, why would you risk Andrew Thomas playing on a hurt foot in those
Right.
scenarios? Like, so
Well, the key you said is hurt. We're separating between guys are not 100%. Let's just shut them down as opposed to just actively sitting someone. Like
right,
Jalen Hurts is going to sit probably this week.
but what the hell are we talking about now? Are we talking about we're grouping them together or are we not?
I was asking your opinion if you're grouping them together, and because
Well,
my answer is
they're
I'm
both.
grouping them together.
Well, I mean, they're both not great for the game, but one I think is a game that you can almost shrug off like a preseason game. If you win, hooray! If you lose, you doesn't matter. You're looking forward to the playoffs. That's not as devastating as a team where you're just disinterested entirely because they're intentionally not fielding a good team because they don't want to.
But
It
I
is
feel like everybody who was mad about the loss yesterday is very interested in their team because they're already looking forward to the future and they want better days. So this franchise has been just a mess for a decade, you know, with some little exceptions. But the worst thing that the league can have is for their fans is apathy, where they just don't care.
no, I
Win,
mean
lose, I don't care.
no, but
This
what
at
you're talking about, the
least,
people who are mad, those are the diehard. They won't be apathetic. But the
right.
general Giants fan right now is absolutely they've been apathetic since October.
Yeah, well,
So
that's
I mean that you still have that. It's
they're not
I'm
watching anyway.
the
So
argument that the people are mad because they're not apathetic, like that's a core of people that are never going to be apathetic. They care too
right,
much because they like too much. That's not that will never wither away, but that doesn't mean that
right.
terminal damage won't be
But
done. I mean,
in every
franchises move
sport,
because of this kind of shit.
yeah, I'm not exactly sure the NFL 100% cares about the sanctity of every single game because, like I said, they've insulated themselves with, other products. Gambling is prevalent, fantasy football is prevalent, the entertainment factor of watching Chris Collinsworth on a Sunday night for the casuals. So, you know, you would I think the league and I think, more than casual fans are looking at not every week individually, but like it's a bigger picture. So I don't think the league really cares. Oh, the last week of the season, not both teams are not trying to win in any scenario.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think so. I think, and they do what they can to scratch those ratings and whatever. Like they know who's watching. They're on top of
Mhm.
that. I think that there's probably things that can be done to prevent it from happening, or happening so often. But who knows? That's sort of another picture. But I
Yeah.
think it comes down to if so the Giants' decision really would involve actively tanking like that in a way that does look bad, but I don't care. I don't know what the average fan thinks about actively tanking where it's obvious. Um, but personally, I don't really care. I think that you're already in a bad way when you're even considering it. Um, but
I,
I think what's interesting here. Well, first of all, I don't think I don't know.
you know what's worse, Grump? I think there's two types of tanking. There's like we're just throwing this whole season away versus, well, it's week 17.
Correct. Yeah. Well, I mean, throwing punting on the whole season early on really is. I'm not okay with that. But like
I'm not okay
single
with that
game
either.
scenarios like this one, where it's just like this is the one game we might actually win, and like there's direct implications from this game. Which one of us is getting the first overall pick, and we'll know more at the end of the day.
Mhm.
So that I think is a more unique scenario, but it does seem to pop up more often than I realize. So whatever. But I mean,
Mhm.
basically, you are down to a decision, right? Like the Giants aren't in the same scenario as the Raiders. The Raiders need a quarterback. That first overall pick means something directly to them personally.
Mhm.
Um,
Right.
and if it doesn't mean drafting a quarterback with that first overall pick, it's certainly a ton of leverage to trade for a proven quarterback around the league or something like that. Um, it means something different because they are missing that. I'm not saying that Jackson Dart is the guy. He could be. There's a lot of evidence pointing in the direction that the Giants may have a franchise quarterback in Jackson Dart. It's possible. It's very early for me to say. However, if they feel that way, that they might, then they would have. Then they are doing the right thing by assuming they have that and working to develop that. And so that puts you in the bind, right? Like, do you tank by sitting this player that needs development, or do you develop this player? Um,
I guess the question is, what is the value of each individual game for his development? I mean,
and
if
are
he's
you
an
using those games to develop him, or are you just trying to win or something like that? Which I don't think their game,
yeah,
like, there were no trick plays in this matchup that suggested that they were pulling out all the stops to score a win, or anything like that. I think they were just running their offense, running
and
their defense, running their special team.
and it's really tough to tell what this team is actually thinking because just last week against Minnesota, we ran a game plan and executed a game plan that was not ideal for Jackson Dart to be developed. We
Agreed.
threw the ball 6 times in the first half. We were, running, doing all these things. That's in the end of the day, how much was he developed? That one game of
Agreed.
experience.
Yeah, I
So,
couldn't agree more. So, and I do kind of wish that they had used this game to work on some things that maybe he needs to work on more in some way. Like, treat this a little bit more like a preseason game where you're not really trying to you're not aiming for success on each play. You're aiming to grow. You're
so,
trying new things, and
so Grump, we've talked about this on this show quite a bit. The thin skinness of this organization. Do you think because of the last couple of weeks of the, criticism's a hard word to say Jackson Dart, but some of the grumblings about has his development been slowed? You know, do you think that impacted at all what they're thinking for these final couple of games with him to kind of put him in the best light possible to kind of quiet some of the noise that's out there that is not really fair and I don't think really matters, but is out there?
I don't know. I don't think so. I think they are just closing their eyes, plugging their ears, and humming season's over so that they can just move on. Like, they're
Hmm.
they're living. This is like asking out a girl and getting a rejection, and living in the moment of her explaining that she doesn't want to go to prom with you. And it's just, instead of it taking like 30 seconds or something, it feels like 5 minutes. This is the 2 week 30-second prom rejection is what's going on. I think they're just kind of trying to get to, like, because seriously, we're recording this Monday. By Monday, next Monday, when we're recording again, this is all. In fact, by Sunday at 4 o'clock after the Cowboys game, they can just walk away from the girl and just move on with their lives and just regroup, fix things. This is a mess. I've
go,
got to brush
go
my
back to
hair
Tinder and
next
find
time.
someone
Yeah,
new. Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, so I think that's how they're handling it. I don't know if they're, you know, and I could be wrong. You know what I mean? Like,
Mhm.
maybe they're so self-absorbed and so absorbed in their optics that this meant a lot to them, or something like that. Where I'm sure it warranted some level of conversation. You know,
Mhm.
uh, but I don't know. I
Can I
truly think that they're just ready to just get this season over with and fix what they believe is wrong.
can I give a quick cranky conspiracy update?
Yes.
So I've been spouting on this show that my theory that Mike Kafka will be back next year. They've already made their decision, and I point to several different things I've seen that makes me think that might happen. I think actually this past week was something against my conspiracy theory. I think if the conspiracy theory was Kafka's already just been decided he's coming back, they would have tanked this game and they would not have cared about optics or anything. Um, I think, trying to win and, shows like this, it's still kind of an audition period for Kafka. So I'm taking a little bit of a step back from my, the meter, like 1 to 10 certainty. It went back a little bit on my theory. I still think he's coming back next year. I had this hunch, but this was evidence against that.
Um. Yeah. I think that there was a slim chance that Mike Kafka could job, and I think people in the building that like him, but I don't think
Mhm.
that he's displayed. I think they've known for a little while. I think
I,
he had to part the Red Sea to earn that. Like, he really had to pull a miracle I think, and immediately, and I don't mean like get results, but like, the you look at the Lions game, like getting something like that where you really had the Lions on the ropes and Jameis Winston, whatever, but like
Mhm.
that would have had to have culminate with guys rallying around him, other performances. Even if you won that game, let's just say that they beat the Lions and whatever.
Just going
Um,
from losers lose to
I mean,
not really
I'm
winners don't
saying
always
it
lose.
would
Yeah.
still have to be an uphill battle. He'd have to convince them in
Mhm.
a bunch of other ways. The anecdotal, like small wins here and there, uh, I don't know if those alone were going to have to help. Like he really would have had to change the entire vibe of the locker room.
And
And
he's
I don't think he's got that personality to do something. Like I think very few guys are that guy. Not saying he can't be a head coach or whatever, but I mean in this scenario, to earn the Giants head coaching job, he would have had to just be a 1 in a million kind of.
right. And again, my head is telling me that he's not going to be back. But again, all those little things are making me, for my little conspiracy side to make this fun, how there was an off ramp for him to be back next year. And I think as I'm playing that game along, I think this past weekend was not supporting that crazy theory. So I don't think he'll be back, but you never know. It's a
Um,
crazy organization. Who knows?
I in terms of tanking, so and like the development, I'm not like mad that they didn't do that. I don't like pinpoint this or blame a certain person or whatever. The implications for what the Giants get as a reward for winning this game of getting the second overall pick is still worth a lot. We don't know how much it's worth. There could be there's a case to be made that it's a dramatic drop in value from the first overall pick if there's only one quarterback worth taking. Right, that is
Okay.
without a doubt a huge factor. The fact that I think it's going to be a pretty dry free agent quarterback market as well,
Mhm.
that I think contributes to weakening the value. But we don't know. We don't know anything
Well,
right now. There are other players. There are some years where the quarterback isn't worth anything. Jadeveon Clowney gets drafted for overall or whatever.
well,
So
quite frankly, if we're really playing this long game out, the bigger thing is they really need to tank this week because dropping from 1 to 2 isn't as big a deal as dropping from 2 to potentially 5 or 6.
oh for
Because
sure.
so you know 1 versus 2, you can say there was an incremental loss in value for the pick, but if we drop down to like 5 or 6, if we beat Dallas and all these other teams lose, all of a sudden, then we have no leverage for trades. Then they don't even get the guy we want on our board. Like
Yeah,
right now, even if we're number 2, okay, there's value we're losing from a leverage standpoint, but we can pick any person we want because we're not be thrown to a quarterback. If they decide, they identify player X, player Y, player Z, and we're down to 6 or even 5, there's a good chance you're not getting that guy. So this is really the week we really need to have Jameis Winston play or whoever, to be very honest.
yeah, and I think the bigger thing is had the Giants tanked last year, gotten the first overall pick last year, drafted Cam Ward last year. I know that means you don't have Abdul Carter, and who knows what that means for how this roster is structured. But it means you don't have to trade into the first round. It means you have more draft assets this year. So that what we're talking about here isn't about getting the second best player in the draft or even the best player in the draft that's not a quarterback. It's about what the value, what we can get for that pick. And
Mhm.
what we're talking about is probably a small margin. Maybe it's a bigger margin, but it's not the difference that it makes. Like if the Giants had tanked last year and gotten Cam Ward, that is a
Yeah.
huge difference to your organization. And again, maybe this is clip worthy in 5 years, and what the Giants are able to trade down for are like three key pieces that go on to win Super Bowls, and their numbers get retired. But I think that it's far less likely than it would have been, for last year for Cam Ward, personally.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um,
And the last thing about the tanky thing before we move on to is don't act like it was just the Giants' decision whether they're going to win or lose. Last year we were playing the Colts, who weren't necessarily in the tank because remember they had drafted um, AR the year before. They thought they still might have a quarterback. The Raiders had every incentive to tank. So it's not just we chose not to. It was another team was trying just as hard, if not more, to tank. So don't don't think the Giants are in complete control of their destiny last week of doing whatever they wanted. They made an organizational decision to win. There's competing forces like everything in life.
Um, moving on from the tanking
Thank
thing,
God.
um, we have to talk about GM Joe Schoen, and I'm going to talk about it separately from the tank because, like I said, I don't blame anybody for not tanking. And for all of what we talked about with like the Giants' optics, maybe he was directed not to. I don't know. It doesn't matter.
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
also think that judging GMs of any stripe beyond like week 7 of a season, or like beyond the trade deadline of a season on a week to week basis, like I don't really think you're getting a whole lot of data points added to, like, you have a general idea of what your arguments are for and against. So I'm not. I'm just. I don't use these extra things as data points unless there's something very specific.
It's
But
it's
like,
actually the opposite, right? Because guys get hurt. You
yeah.
know,
Well, I
you're
mean,
gonna blame
I
Joe
do
Shane
think
because
I do think you own your overall record, right? Like, you have
Mhm.
4 years of Joe Shane records. Only one
Yep.
of them is good, and they've progressively gotten worse year after year. I think that is in itself a data point. But I mean, changing my mind or adding data points week to week, I think is just silly. Like,
Oh yeah, that's what I mean. Like, when you're talking about from week 12 to 15, now all of a sudden this Giants roster right now is worse than it was 4 weeks ago, not because of any moves that Joe Shane made, because now it's attrition.
hmm,
And attrition injuries are not Joe Shane's fault. So I completely agree with what you're saying.
I I do think that Joe Shane has done a fireable job. I think that his missteps early on, following the 2022 season into 2023, has set back what I believe to be a fairly sound vision that he did have coming in.
Mhm.
I think that overall, if you look at the 4 years, he has done things in a very 2 steps forward, 1 step backward way to fix things. I think that the cap is in a much better spot. They have room next year. They're about middle of the pack in the league as it stands now. There's some moves they can make to open that up and move them even further up the charts. They're in the middle of the pack the year after. So that he's cleaned up a lot of what Dave Gettleman was very bad at, which was spending too much money and structuring contracts in ways that hurt them for players that offered them only brief windows of playability. So there was a lot of back-ended money that he had to clean up. But he did do that. I do think that he's built the offensive line, although it took so long to do. And some of it I would even say is a little bit by accident or fluky, because there were some bad signings in there too. Like James Hudson is a terrible signing. Marcus
Mhm.
Bowe working out somewhat as a functional swing tackle as a 5th round
Well,
pick is sort of lucky.
but my counter to that is, the two draft picks they've had in the offensive line, like the high ones, like Evan Neal was a bust,
Mm-hmm.
and also JMS is still kind of an
Well,
incomplete.
he's an incomplete, but it's yes, all of those things are true. I don't want to overstate Joe Shane's contributions to the offensive line, but I feel more comfortable about the offensive line that they've had for 2 years now, starting five. I feel more comfortable about that line than any offensive line I've seen the Giants put on the field for a very long time. So it's
True.
easy to counter. It took him to, I said from the beginning, it took him too long. There were missteps along the way. Some of it was fluky, some of it was by accident. The intent was to sign Jermaine Illuminor as a guard. They ended up having to play him at tackle because Evan Neal was terrible, and then it worked out. That is sort of just by accident. They've screwed up along the way, but nevertheless, enough darts were thrown at the offensive line board to field a good offensive line. So it is still something. Did he do a good job of it? No, and I think that's why he doesn't deserve to be here. I mean, like, he's screwed around too much around the edge with, keeping players like Graham Gano, fucking around with kickers and whatever. Like, there's been a ton of mismanagement that I think a good or even average GM doesn't screw up. So, I mean, I do think he deserves to go, but it looks like he is going to stay. And I mean, the argument is being made now, and I want conspiracy cranky in on this one.
Oh, here I am.
The argument is it seems as if people are bracing themselves for the Giants to say John Mara is too sick to run a GM search. Do you
I don't buy
believe?
it.
Yeah, you don't buy it.
I don't buy that. I mean, that would sound like the Giants are, an autocratic organization where John Mara does everything. And I don't believe that to be true.
Well, he is president.
And
I mean, like,
also,
could they do that without him entirely? Is a question.
well, the Giants, they've been owned by the same family since day one. They, I'm positive, has succession plan when Wellington Mara,
They have
you
to.
know,
The
got
league
old
the
and got
league
sick and everything.
the league
I guarantee
requires
they
a
have one.
succession plan.
What's that?
The league requires a succession plan on
Oh,
file.
I mean, more than a formal, like this person will be. I think there's like you know, the gray area succession plan.
Okay.
Not when the day Wellington Mara died, John Mara took over. I think there's you know, we're hitting these different marks and, more and more responsibility gets taken, shifts and transfers. I think that's been in place for a little while now. I don't think I really, really don't believe in the world is stopping and waiting until John Mara dies. That wouldn't make any sense at all. Don't forget, we also have, 50% of the team is also owned by a whole nother, faction. And they're not going to sit around and wait around because the other owner's getting sick. So I don't believe it.
I think that they just. I
I think when
think
you
that.
have limited data points of limited knowledge things, people like to tie everything together.
Well, I
And
mean,
just because
they made they.
we need a GM, the coach is sick, let's tie that two together. I think they have nothing to do with each other.
Well, what I'm saying is that people are bracing for the Giants to use that as an excuse. You don't think they will?
No, I don't think so. I
Really?
think you think the Giants would use the mayor is sick, we're holding off type of thing, or blaming or just attributing to his sickness is why there's inactivity? I don't think they would do that.
I think that they could not say it directly, but say it to the right people to get it into newspapers so it gets out there. Like feeding it to Schwartz and, getting it in the Post. Getting
Oof.
Schwartz to basically write it so that they don't have to say it. And then also have John Mara cancel his press conference because he is too sick to do a press conference or whatever, and then just letting people connect the dots. My actual thought is not that he is too sick to do that. My actual thought is, for all the reasons you said too. Yeah, it's just that they do believe in Joe Schoen's vision, and they're too chicken shit to say it because they know they have a good enough pulse of the fan base and the beat that Joe Schoen has screwed up, and I don't think is a very likable guy. I think there are people that like him, but I think in general, I think he's pissed off people. I think he rubs some people the wrong way around the league.
Are you talking about Shane or are you talking about Mara right now?
I'm talking about Schoen.
Okay.
Yeah. I think that John Mara does still believe in Joe Schoen's vision.
I think if you're trying to do that from an optic standpoint, I think if the Giants, let's say they were like only like 3 or 4 years have been in this rut they're in now, but it's been so long, it's been a decade that I don't think you can. I don't think the fans, or I don't think anybody wants to hear, well, we're waiting for right now. We don't want to make any moves because of the owner. I think people want action and people want change. And I think if they tried to float that kind of story out there, if they back channel it, I think it would go over like a lead balloon. I think it would really, really backfire on them.
I mean, I agree, especially since people seem to see it coming. So like
Hmm.
this is already being discussed. So if they do it at this point, people did see it coming, and I think it would blow up in their face.
Hmm.
I don't know if they will or they won't, but I at least think it's a plausible excuse that you can throw out there, whatever. Um, but I mean, I don't believe it. I don't buy it at all. It doesn't
Oh,
make any sense to me.
well,
And
let's put it this way. Let's put it this way, Grump. If that is true, let's give him the benefit to say it's true. Well, that means that Mayor probably doesn't have much time left at all. And if that's the case, the secession plan should kick in.
well, that's
If
what I'm
it's
saying.
just
If
something
he's not even going to be around for the fucking results, why should he be making the decisions? Like, if your
that too,
secession plan is Tim McDonald or Chris Mara or whoever it is, you should
it's
have
like
him be making the decision on a new GM because he is the
it's like the
one.
25th Amendment. Like if the president's incapacitated, you have to transfer of power to the next person. And if we're following that logic and he is too sick, but he's going to be recovering for the next year and a half and everything, we can't pause a team for a year and a half. So I think if they're waiting for it, it's means he's really closer to the end than we all want to
Or,
or
well, I
hope that
mean,
he is.
but if he's going to fully recover and live for another, let's say, 10 years, then would you have someone sit in and then change your general manager in your absence?
Well,
That's not just putting things on hold. I mean, that is a massive
well,
organizational decision.
we just had an interim coach fire a defensive coordinator, fire a bunch of
Doesn't mean anything.
coaches.
That is not even close because that doesn't
I'm
change
talking
the
about this is
rudders of.
this is a team that doesn't mind making big moves with
But that's not even close to the same. That is an anthill next to Denali. An in-season interim head coach firing a defensive coordinator that's dead anyway in 6 weeks is not the same as changing your GM. That
I didn't say it
changes
was the same. I didn't
it's
say it was the same. I'm saying
but they're not even
they're
comparable.
not afraid to letting interim people, and if we're talking about an interim uh president of operations,
Yeah, but dude, come on. I mean,
if if you're
they're not
the
afraid of what? The interim
if
person
you're the
making a
job
decision
if
that
you have
doesn't
the
make
job,
any.
if you're an interim and have the job, you have the job. You make the decisions. Because we all know
Yes,
if
but
an
they're
interim
but
we all know what
you so
Mara's
then you are
situation.
you're comparing those decisions. You're comparing the
Yeah,
decision of changing a GM to changing an in-season defensive coordinator that is dead at the end of the year anyway.
in a way
They're
I am, yeah.
but they're not comparable because one only affects the next 5 weeks and the other affects the next 5 years. And so, I mean, the argument that's being made is that I assume is that what you said, right? Like that John Mara is currently not well enough going through chemotherapy or whatever treatment, right? To for the next year and a half, he's not going to be able to whatever.
Right.
But he will recover and will live on for another 8 years and have the ability to resume his role. But in that 1 year, are you going to let that person, that interim person, make a decision that alters the franchise's direction for the next 5 years when he will then resume? My argument personally is whether he's going to die or not, like he should give up the reins entirely anyway. Just sit back and retire as president and move your succession plan in
I
motion at that point.
100% agree.
Because the next
This
eight
should be the
years,
catalyst
you know what?
for it.
Just recover, man, and enjoy life. You're a billionaire.
Mhm.
That shouldn't be an excuse anyway. Like, you can continue to offer your guidance, but just take your hands off the damn thing. Go to every game, wave your hand, and show up for every 2007 and 2011 Super Bowl reunion because you were the owner then, and you can claim that, I guess. That would be my argument. Is if that's where you are, then just retire
Well,
and
I guess
just
how is the
concentrate on your
power
health.
structure of the team? I mean, how much is he alone making these big decisions, or how much is he working with, never mind the other owners, just his inner circle making these decisions, and he has like the final say. But is he like Al Davis, where it's just like,
Well, I mean,
or
I don't
Jerry
know, but
Jones? Mm.
but
That
I,
impacts it too.
I have no idea. I don't know if anyone does have an idea, but how much does that really matter? I mean, if he is the ultimate decision
Well,
maker and he's
I'm talking
not
about
able of making decisions.
if there's an interim president. So is there already a structure in place with this organization where it's not just Mara, but there's
I
an
assume.
inner circle? So when this interim comes in, that inner circle still,
Yeah, I assume Chris
yeah.
is part of that, which we got
Mhm.
sort of like leak-ish kind of story that I don't even know if it's true, that he prevented John Mara from firing Brian Dable after the Denver collapse and whatever. I
Mhm.
assume so, but again, I don't think that there's. I think if you were willing to let an interim make a 5-year decision like that, then you should just not even come back at all. You know what I mean? Like, if you're going to let him make a decision of that magnitude, it's the biggest decision a GM can make outside of a new stadium or a new location or a new
Yeah,
logo, a rebranding. Like, and those decisions happen, only a few times in an entire organization's history. They changed. It's the next biggest decision. It sets up your next 5. It's a 5-year plan. Um, if you're going to let him make the 5-year plan, then just take all your hands off the wheel entirely.
that's I think is going to happen.
But I mean,
I
yeah, I agree.
yeah,
Oh, so you think so? Do you think Joe Shane is safe at the end of this year?
I think he's coming back. I think if I think he's either going to be fired when they fire Dable or he's coming back. I don't think there's an evaluation period for the rest of the year because what, like we've said many times in this show, what does he actually do from you know, week 9 or week 10 to the end of the year? Not much.
Yeah, yeah, really.
So if the decision was made, at that time, we're cleaning house and starting over, they would have did it then. If they didn't, I think he's staying.
Yeah, and I don't think he's going anywhere either. And I like I said before, I don't think it has to do with John Mara's health. I think it's just John Mara does still believe in his vision. Um,
And others in the organization do too.
Others do. I do think I've heard that there are some that do not. Um, but yeah, I don't
So I
know.
think it's healthy for an organization to, like, remember when Lincoln had his cabinet, he had from the other party also. Like he wanted ideas that weren't exactly aligned with his, like how it is today, to make the right decisions on things. So it's not the worst thing in the world that 100% people aren't in lockstep with every decision.
Yeah, I would agree with that, and I think that very few times people are in total agreement like that. Um, I am a little bummed that it looks like Joe Shane is coming back.
I'm
Um,
very bummed.
I, 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 I think that the coaching hire makes a bigger difference. Um, yeah, I don't know. I wonder though, like if a John Harbaugh comes in with his level of experience, does he get enough sway to like push back to Joe Shane? I mean, to his credit, I do think that Joe Shane seemed to work with Brian Dable on things. I just think that Brian Dable was maybe not so good at making critical decisions, such as
Brian
managing his team and hiring other coaches.
and Brian Dable is a first time head coach.
Right.
You know, Harbaugh's got, how many 15 years experience with one team. He's
Yeah,
got a lot of
like
sway in the league.
if Joe
Yeah.
Shane and John Harbaugh are able to like hold hands and frolic through the fields, in perfect harmony with all their decisions, does that does the eye test make Joe Shane look a little bit better as a GM? Does that
My
yield more success on Sundays?
my
Maybe.
gut feeling is anybody with the cachet of Harbaugh comes in with a GM that he wants, a handpicked GM in his. I don't think Shane is bringing in a major name like that. I think someone of that caliber is going to want either complete control or have his handpicked person come in.
Yeah. So do you think
They,
that? So I assume then you're saying that by keeping Joe Shane, that limits our head coaching
yes,
abilities.
I that's what I think. Because
Hmm.
I mean, think about it. If you're John Harbaugh and you're coming in,
But that's a
what is
little
your
weird, right? I mean, like, it's one thing to be like, I don't want to work for this boss, but it's another to be like, Essentially,
I've been a lot
I
more
don't know.
successful than my boss, which is
Mm,
that's a weird thing,
yeah, yeah,
right?
it is.
Have you have you or anybody you've ever known like gone into a place and like I've done better things than this guy has,
Well,
and
I
you
mean,
know
you know
what he's
what?
done before.
Maybe that's the wrong analogy. Maybe they're more like partners and not boss and employee in
But
terms
I
of
think
practicality.
yeah, but I think a guy like Harbaugh is he's have a very set vision of his plan for success. I've already, I've implemented this plan and it has been successful. Here's my ring,
Yeah.
you know. And
Well, what
Joe
I'm
Shane is
saying
like, well,
is,
this is the way we do things around here.
it's a little bit
Uh,
less weird to come to a new place and be like, you know, when you view it in a way of like guys working together as opposed to like a boss and employee relationship. It's a little bit less weird to be like, I can work with this guy. I can't work with this guy. Like,
I think it would be weirder for Shane than it would be. And I think that's when ego comes in, and I don't know if he'd ever do that.
yeah, and that's weird. It's a little bit weird for Joe Shane to have any level of ego,
Yeah.
considering he hasn't
But
done jack shit.
all these guys though, that's how they got to the roles they have is having incredible egos.
That's true.
They have incredible confidence. They've been successful all the way to this current point. I mean, say what you will about Joe Shane. Up until this point, he's been very successful in his career. He's
Yeah.
moved up very fast. He's still a young guy. This is the first time, and everybody is successful up to a point where they're no longer successful. They rise through the ranks. So I it's been a tough 4 years for Joe Shane, but you know something? If he comes back for year 5, he's still going to be confident. They still have confidence in me. My plan will work. I just need more time. So, but when all of a sudden a Harbaugh comes into the picture, you know, now we're not doing things my way. Now we're doing things with this guy's way. And I think that makes it difficult.
Separate question.
Yes.
Do you think the Ravens would be crazy to fire John Harbaugh?
Yes.
You would
I
be
think I think
so surprised what Ravens fans said to me.
fans are stupid.
Yeah, it's
What
true.
are they saying?
Nothing. Just like people just like saying like you're used to losing. Like at a certain point, you get sick of being like you need someone to push you over the top. It's just like I don't know, man. I just I do think that the Ravens have in some ways underachieved in big moments, but they've always fielded a really good team. And falling apart in the playoffs, when you consistently go there for as long, like there are 3 head coaches that have been around long enough for you to judge them and be like, well, they've only won one time in a 20-year span. It's like, it's only been him, Mike Tomlin, and Andy Reid. And Andy Reid was for years in Philadelphia, like 2 decades in Philadelphia and never won shit. And
Buffalo
here
fans,
he is now winning in Kansas City.
Marv Levy, I think is 100 years old now, or he's 99 or something like that. And believe me, there are Buffalo fans in which they can get him out of his old age home and have him coach because they love the guy.
Yeah.
Never won a Super Bowl.
Yeah. Well, the other thing
Yeah.
too is I think there's an argument to be made that it's really difficult being mid. And I'm not talking about like John Harbaugh and the Ravens specifically, but like let's just say you're a team, you're a head coach of a team and you are, 13-4 every year and you choke at various points in the playoffs, right? Like you're Sean McDermott, right? For Buffalo.
Mm-hmm.
And you've done it for as long as John Harbaugh, like 15 years. That just tells me that like every 3 years you have to hire a new fucking coordinator, whether it be
Yep.
defense or offense. Every couple of years, like you never get a consistent staff. And shit, man, if you're Sean McDermott or John Harbaugh, who are not offensive coordinators, they're not running the McDermott offense, then that means like your whole offensive identity is changing like every couple of years. You're hiring from within or you have to hire from outside. Like it's a little bit kind of what the Eagles' problem is. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Right now, where the Eagles are like, man, they should have never
Detroit.
hired from within for the offensive coordinator when Kellen Moore left. Like I do think that there is a different struggle that prevents you from possibly going over the top. That's not necessarily your fault every single time.
And also, postseason performance, I think, is a little overrated in how you evaluate because
Guys get hurt.
it isn't a little way a crapshoot. You
Yeah.
know, if I a field goal hits an upright and you don't score because of that, does that mean you're a bad coach? If a ball gets picked, if we play all of a sudden the NFC Championship game is being played in 3 inches of rain or a foot of snow and they lose, or there's so many factors in a one game scenario that I don't think it's I don't think it's really fair to judge coaches or even quarterbacks on postseason. And I don't think it's choking because you're also playing really good teams. When you're in the NFC Championship team, you're playing a really good team. When you're in a Super Bowl, you're playing a really good team. So I don't know. It's look at they're 11-6 every year. They're 10-7. That's the mark. You've got to
Yeah,
get
I
in the
mean, I would
position to
agree. Yeah.
you got to be in the position to win or lose these postseason games. And the great coaches always seem to get the maximum squeeze of orange juice from those oranges.
All right, let's wrap this up with your Dallas prediction next week. And well, I mean, let's get a couple predictions. Number one, are the Giants going to make moves that make it look like they're intentionally trying to lose, such as sitting a healthy player? An impactful one like Carter, Burns, Wandale, Jackson Dart.
No, because
No.
again, I think the overriding reasons what I said before. I just think this team is a little too thin-skinned. They value every win individually, and it gets people off their case.
Do the Cowboys.
Cowboys are out of it. Uh, no, I don't think so. I think they'll play their. I don't think they'll sit anybody on purpose.
Okay.
What are they really? What's the incentive for them to do it? I mean, like, are we talking,
I don't think much. They're like
yeah,
7-8-1, going 7-9-1. I don't know how much that really changes their draft standing.
yeah. So I think they play, and also, it is a division rival. The game is in New York. I don't think they will.
Do the Giants win or do the Cowboys win?
The Cowboys win. I think the Cowboys because I don't think they're going to be. I don't think they'll be pulling many players, and I think they're just a better team. And how many times have we beaten Dak in the last 8 years? Not often.
Yeah, I mean, I
Hardly at
certainly
all.
think their offense is far more explosive. Um, so yeah,
There
I
could be there
agree
could
with
be
that.
there could be 60,000 Cowboy fans in the stands too.
Um, does Joe Shane get fired?
He will be our general manager when we kick off next September 10th.
Yeah, I agree.
I think,
And
like I said before, if they were going to get rid of him, they would have fired him when they fired Dable, and they didn't.
I agree. I just completely agree. Like if they were
Mhm.
really done with everything, I think part of it is they wanted Jackson Dart to be further developed by Brian Dable, but they reached a point where Brian Dable was trying to win games to save his job when they were just done with him, and it didn't make
Yeah.
sense anymore. Like now you have him like at least there was a perception that he was putting Jackson Dart at risk rather than developing him anymore because he was trying to win
Mhm.
games. They didn't care about him winning. They
Right.
were
And
they would have liked him to stay for the whole year and fired him at the end of the year and have him spend a whole year with Jackson Dart, but because they didn't think that could happen, I think that they had to fire him then. It's what I like to think. I'd like them to have at least had that much thought put into it and not just like, Chris Mara had to stop John Mara from firing him because he was angry one day. Who knows?
if you put a gun to my head, I think that's what happened. I think it was more of a. I don't think it was as nuanced the firing as we would like it to be,
Hmm.
unfortunately.
And my last prediction question for you this
Yes,
week
sir.
is: do the Giants trade down from whatever pick they end up with, or do they sit and pick? It's way early, so this is just a complete. I don't know if it's a shot in the dark, but I mean it's a shot with one
I
eye
think
closed.
I all right, I'll throw you one out there. I think there'll be a whole bunch of moves made. I think they're going to trade down. They'll take some picks and trade back up again. I think there's going to be a lot of movement this offseason with the picks they start off at the end of the game Sunday to when they're actually picking on that Thursday night for draft day. So
Interesting.
yes, I definitely think they'll trade down, but that'll be like the opening salvo in several moves that they make.
Last time the Giants traded around that much in the first round, I guess when they traded back in for Jackson Dart's a big deal. But they traded down 2 times in the Kadarius Toney year, which ultimately was Joe Judge's last year as head coach. So we'll see. I think that they will. I think that they will end up trading down, but it is a really big guess, man. I mean, if
Well, it depends.
it could
Are
be
we
very
2
much
or are we
by
7?
yeah. Well, there's that, but also if it's by March 1st, there might be a non-quarterback that people are just salivating over that are saying he's a can't miss corner or something. I don't know, linebacker, defensive tackle. Name a position the Giants need very badly, and it becomes very cloudy from there. If they're trading down and letting someone else take something at a position of need for more picks, or if they're just
And
going to stand pat and pick a good player.
all right, let me throw a prediction at you then.
Okay.
Right now, there's Mendoza is really the quarterback we're talking about.
Yep.
Do you predict that over the course of any combination of this college football playoff, senior day, the lead up to the draft, a second quarterback gets right up there, so it's like 1-2 for quarterbacks? Like an Anthony Richardson type of guy who just, that was the combine with him was like, holy Jesus, this guy's superhuman and just shot up draft boards. Do you predict there'll be a second guy who's like, if Mendoza is still the clear one, this guy is a very close second that
Um,
we're not thinking about right now? You don't have to say who it is. It may just like a quarterback 2.
like, will it happen, or will people be like jumping all over it? Because I do think it's going to happen. Like, I think a quarterback 2 will shoot up enough where it's like he's going to go second.
Yeah.
But will we be fawning over him, or will it be, you know, I don't know.
A Anthony Richardson type of
Yeah. Like somebody
it's
that
like
we're overrating and didn't really like has
this is like the
serious
Ivan
flaws.
Drago we just created. That's we don't know if he's actually really that good or not. We just see the physical specimen and we saw the jump and we saw all this other stuff.
Yeah,
I
I
think
think
that's
it's going to
definitely
be
going to
that.
happen.
Yeah, I think it's
And I
going to
think
be
that's
that.
going to help us too.
But it's a tough prediction now. It's very early.
Yeah.
Um, there's yeah. I think it's possible for sure.
Mhm.
I'll make that prediction that yes, that's going to happen. And
One final prediction.
yeah,
Will we have video for next week's show?
yes. I'm gonna have to buy a not cheap computer part. So that's gonna be this. Well, I mean, I'll have a solution for an interim. Actually,
So for those of you who want to join our Patreon, that sounds like
yeah.
an excellent opportunity.
Donate a couple bucks. No, I'll have an interim solution while I come up with the permanent, more expensive solution. Anyway, that's going to do it for this episode. We will see you guys after the last game of the Giants 2025 season. It was a blast while it lasted. Thank you for hanging with us, and we'll get into all of the wrap-up next week. It's going to be a busy episode with a lot to discuss, I am sure.
Oh yeah.
So be sure to continue to watch on YouTube, listen on SoundCloud, iTunes, Spotify, and wherever you listen to your normal podcast stuff. And of course, you can find me on Giants Nation Show. I think we're going to be really, really busy this week with a bunch of Joe Schoen big picture questions and stuff like that. So lots in there as well. And we'll see you guys next week.
Shout out to Danny King too for his new follower.
Yeah. We
You
won't
know
get
what
into
that
all
is.
that. We won't get into all that.
Yeah,
But
just
we'll we'll see you guys next week. Until then, go Giants.
Go Giants.